Hi, welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is filmmaker Kazik Radwanski, who writes and directs things like Princess Margaret Boulevard, Out in That Deep Blue Sea, Cutaway, and the feature film Tower, with producer Dan Montgomery under their shingle, medium-density fiberboard films. Kaz's new feature, How Heavy This Hammer, opens in Toronto and Vancouver this Friday, August 12th, which gave us the excuse to sit down in the studio. Kaz picks Stroszek, Werner Herzog's 1977 drama starring Bruno S. as a young man named Bruno Stroszek, who, upon his release from an undefined institution, sets out on a path that will take him from Germany to America, exchanging the grey misery of Berlin for the vast white potential of Wisconsin and North Carolina. He buys into the American dream and pays dearly for it, because this is a Werner Herzog film. With a series of bizarre, unexpected images contrasting with a deep streak of humanity throughout, it's a verite drama that feels like a documentary featuring one of the most distinctive and original actors ever to step in front of a camera. It makes sense, even when it doesn't make sense. And it has the dancing chicken in it. This is Someone Else's Movie.
To me, it's my favorite Herzog, without a doubt. I think at the same time, Herzog's a big filmmaker that I love, and just after watching all of his stuff, I think this one really hits the core of what I love about his work, and yeah.
I mean, it's Herzog's most iconic film, I think, just because of the chicken and because of the way that sort of followed him in a way.
I would say Aguirre probably is his most iconic one, right?
And I think of almost Burden of Dreams even more so, right?
Yeah,
because it's about Fitzcarraldo, but he's the figure.
Right, yeah, Fitzcarraldo as well.
So there are so many things, but then now as he sort of, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with the Grizzly Man episode with Trevor.
Oh, somebody picked a Herzog.
Yeah, Trevor Juris. He has sort of become this beloved cultural signifier where, he can turn up in Parks and Recreation, or he can be in a mockumentary, or he can be a character that Paul F. Tompkins creates.
Yeah.
And you go back to the earlier stuff, and it's so angry and sad, and it's not adorable in the slightest. There's no sense of a wink to the audience. And Stroszek is, it's weirdly optimistic on some levels, but it's also the story of the complete destruction. Like, America eats this guy.
Yeah.
And it's not even America that does it. He sort of allows it to happen.
I think that's another thing I really like about it. Yeah, as sad as it is, it's just so wonderful at the same time. Mm-hmm. As dark, you couldn't get darker. I don't think of it as a miserable film.
Yeah. It's just a downward trajectory, I suppose, that makes me.
Yeah. But it's just filled with so much spontaneity and just sort of moments that just come out. It's just so filled with life at times, and just just the scenarios and. Stuff at the truck stop, and all the characters are just so, you can tell that they're sort of plucked from real life or from such unique places that it just energizes the film.
He famously cast most roles with non-professionals and had a couple of actors in there to sort of steer, but for the most part there's people. And if you want to drop names, feel free, because I just double checked that we got them right. But
Eva Mattes, was she in a relationship with Herzog at some point, or were they married?
I just assume so with all these. The German New Wave thing that happened. But she was in Petra von Kant.
Exactly. Yeah, that she's a major actress in that period, from what I understand.
And Clemens Scheitz, who's in a bunch of his films.
Yeah.
And then there are people. There are just sort of character actors surrounding themselves, sort of steering them. But for the most part, you just have this weird naturalistic performance where people are a little self-conscious. Bruno, as well, seems to sort of be thinking about his position in the frame a lot, because he's always he's glancing. But it creates this amazing character of someone who is wondering what people think of him all the time. I mean, if you remove the idea that this guy is just checking to see if he's in frame or if he's on his mark, it becomes this weird, disconnected man who is unmoored in his own world.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, just the subtleties that he captures. It's just his eyes. Yeah, his eyes are amazing. and how often he's doing things he's probably not supposed to do. Like he'll just duck out of frame or sort of do something weird, and it's just his way of speaking. How he'll just do these it's just amazing how I mean you so rarely see that in films. And I mean I think Herzog wrote this film for Bruno. That
supposedly it was an apology to him.
That he was meant to be in Wojciech. And then at the last minute he decided
he went with Kinski instead.
Yeah, and so he wrote it in 4 days for him. So it's just he's so much at the center of the film. It's so much just tailored to him and constant. But at the same time,
but he's this element that can't be contained.
There's depth, so much depth to it too. It's not just reacting to it. It's like the scenes where he's getting beaten up. I mean, you kind of realize. I mean, I sort of realized. I rewatched it recently. And you sort of realized he was beaten like this, by his mother. Before he was, and then he was institutionalized. So it actually mirrors his life in such a deep way. And then, I mean, his performance is incredible at times. Like the scene where he breaks up with Eva, or that you sort of realize they're not a couple anymore. He's just like, this is what loneliness is. I am a lonely man. And just like it's something that I think it's such an unusual performance that it'd be so hard to come to that point using other methods, It's just
you really just you have to almost just point the camera and hope it happens. I regret the one time I talked to Herzog, we only had 12 minutes and we talked about Bad Lieutenant mostly, but there's so many questions I can ask him about the other 30 movies, like all the other stuff. And this is one of those films that is, weirdly enough, the sequel or the companion piece, I guess, to The Enigma of Caspar Hauser, but it is even more of an enigma itself, because it feels like that kind of alchemy you hear about all the time where, this happened, but we couldn't control it. It just happened.
Yeah. Or I can't really explain it, but we just have to do this.
Yeah. To the point where, like, the last 10 minutes of the film, and we'll get back to the first 80 or so, but the last 10 minutes of the film is almost proudly non-narrative. It's just things happening. And it culminates and there's a plot that is being carried out, and over the last 20 minutes, just starting from him driving off in the car from the garage, it just stops being a character study and becomes this weird, despairing essay film.
Yeah.
Sort of. And I don't know if that's because by that point in the film, Bruno is so completely gone into his misery, and he's just trying to, the classic film trope of trying to escape yourself, which you can never do, because the camera shows us that, you're still you and we're following you and that's not going to change. But there is a sense that he's almost trying to flee the movie at one or two points towards the end, where if he can just get away from everything, then it might be okay.
Yeah.
Or it's the plane is going into its power dive and this is the end coming right at us and we can't do anything to stop it. I've seen the film, I think 3 times now, like sitting through it all the way through, and just, I don't know which ending I prefer. It's this really mesmerizing thing that the movie gets you to this place about 85 minutes in where you're just like, yeah, okay, well, I don't know that I'm despairing for you, but I also don't know that there's any other way this can end.
Yeah.
We've just been watching this guy on this trajectory all the time.
Yeah. No, I mean,
sorry, that was just me forcing my interpretation.
No, I know, and I guess I agree with it. But I don't know if it's, even when we sort of assume he shoots himself at the end, but they don't actually show it or prove it. I mean, maybe he doesn't. But
on the commentary track, Herzog says, maybe he fires into the forest. And come on.
So, I mean, it's somewhat open, but at the same time, it's this desire to flee, that driving sequence also seems like a very Herzogian moment, just catharsis through travel.
Right. And weirdly prefiguring Jarmusch's same obsession with that framing, the way that cars are alone in the shot, as opposed to in traffic.
And then the car driving in a circle, the chickens,
dancing chicken,
and then the chairlift.
Yeah.
So it's this sort of the desire to escape, and then but being caught in this loop.
Mm-hmm. And is this really me?
Is it on the back of the chairlift? Yeah. Yeah.
Which is amazing. And he's, again, on the commentary, Herzog says that he waited half an hour for the lift to come back around so
he could get that.
Place him in that chair.
Yeah, it's great commentary. Yeah, I listened to it again myself.
Yeah, I would recommend to anyone listening to this that just go for it. Watch the movie, but then don't play the commentary, even ironically, until you've seen the film. But Herzog and Norman Hill recorded a bunch of commentaries for a number of his movies back for the first wave of Anchor Bay DVDs, and they're all tremendous because they're recorded later in life, and he has that sense of who he is and who he's perceived to be, and he still just absolutely refuses to bend on the interpretations. He's going to tell you what he made these movies about.
And there's a couple with Crispin Glover, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, which are also good.
Yeah.
More life. Unpredictable life. But the effect of Stroszek is to spend, like an hour in Germany and then an hour or a little less in America and be completely at sea in both, because that's how the character is presented. He's been in prison or an institution. It's vague about where he's been. But he's being released and being told not to drink again. And the first thing he does is go to a bar. And, you can say that there are inciting incidents in classic screenplay structures, but this is almost the comic version of that, except that it's so incredibly tragic. He's given, in the first 7 minutes of the movie, he's given a roadmap to a happy, or at least a contented life, and just goes right off script immediately, and consciously or not, just puts himself on that trajectory.
Yeah.
But it's also weirdly funny when it happens, because it's like any reversal. You've spent that much time being told to expect that this is going to happen. Oh, there'll be challenges. He won't drink. We'll see all the cliched scenes where someone holds the drink in their hand and refuses. Nope, straight in. Just goes right to the bar.
Yeah.
That's this kind of movie.
Yeah. It's the best thing. I heard Herzog say, I think kind of captures it for me, is that it's a eulogy. It's what the film is. It's eulogy for America, but then also it kind of feels like that for the character as well. That this downward spiral, but it's not criticizing at all. It's just sort of, I don't know. You're on this path, like it's inevitable, but it's still kind of beautiful as you watch it.
Yeah.
And so just how you see him get thrown around. As horrible as it is, or it's just so wonderful, the scenes of him with the accordion in the alleyway. I think that's how they met, or
he met him.
Or he was in a documentary. He was in a documentary as a street performer, and but it seems for me too like one of Herzog's most connected to reality sort of films. Just the way he captures Berlin is so kind of fascinating. I don't know if that really happens in any of his other films where you really get a sense of place,
like just sort of day-to-day existence.
Yeah, but just the types of characters you would find, like those pimps and hanging out in bars, and it's great.
Well, what you said about the elegy for America hits, because what occurred to me this time is realizing that there's a complete structure in place for the inevitable failure of the motor, of the mortgage and the television and all the stuff that they buy on the installment plan. There's no hostility or anger. People just show up and say, well, you didn't pay, so we take them away. And then it just cuts mercilessly right to the auction. Everybody's really friendly. Everybody's very good-natured. It just... This happens all the time, is what that movie is telling me. That this is the state of things in America in the 70s in Wisconsin.
And it's just such a poetic way of telling it. Even that they literally take his house away, that they leave him standing there, that his house is taken from him in such a literal way. And then the auctioneer, that it's almost like the poetry of it, just this foreign language.
Yeah, and
that's what's great about it too, is that there's so much foreign. Like the Herr Scheitz guy just trying to talk to people. He's just speaking in German, and these random people from Wisconsin that are acting in the film and just have no idea what he's saying.
There's the two ranchers or hunters who he comes up to and tries to measure their magnetism.
Yeah, animal magnetism. Yeah.
And I have no idea how much preparation they had. Herzog speaks of just using people for one take and then letting them go.
Yeah. Like in the truck stop scenes, apparently.
And everyone's just sort of pleasantly bewildered.
Yeah. That people literally have just arrived in that truck stop and just make an announcement and film it. don't sign any releases or anything like that. It's great.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's kind of a pure way to make movies.
Yeah.
But also an increasingly impossible one, I think, now with, like people would sue you over capturing the back of your head in a crowd shot or something.
Well, I don't want to be too specific about how I made films, but I would say it sometimes isn't too far from that or Matt Johnson, I think.
Yes, Matt Johnson's actually actively committing fraud.
Yeah, NASA, right?
Made.
So yeah, no, I don't think too much has changed in some ways,
You just have to be willing to do it.
You have to be, to want those moments.
So what was your first experience of Stroszek? When did you first see it?
I have a very vivid memory of seeing it at the Cinematheque, the old Cinematheque, the AGO, and seeing it on 35. I mean, I had seen a lot of Herzog films before on VHS. I used to work at a video store on the Danforth, and I went through all the ones that were available at the time. But yeah, watching him on 35 was such a... especially that shot of the premature baby on the big screen. It's just so overwhelming. Just the mixture of how tender it is, but also just how harsh it is, and seeing something so small and fragile on such a big screen. Yeah. So that's what sticks with me the most. I saw that, Aguri, and a couple other ones. But yeah, seeing Herzog on 35. Every once in a while, a director will do that, where you see their work for the first time in a theater, and you totally understand why it's important to see movies on 35 in theaters.
The texture just does not come across on VHS. I mean,
there's just such a strength to his images too. Like they really are. They hit you in the stomach. Like they're just completely overwhelming in a way that I can't really compare it. Just there's something so direct about his stuff. Something so where. I don't know the right word to say it, but just how this film is built around so many of those moments where there's something that haunted Herzog, and it's just, this is a hauntingly beautiful thing, and I'm going to stick it in the movie. Right. Like the chickens or the baby or so much of it. So something about the strength of his images. But yeah, that's how I came to Herzog. I mean, he was huge for me for a long period of time. I mean, he still is, but I definitely went through a very deep Herzog phase where I read Herzog and Herzog, and I tracked down a copy of Walking in Ice. So yeah, I mean, in so many ways, Herzog is, just his approach to cinema and his how passionate he is about it, but at the same time how unromantic it is, how practical. Yeah, so so really big for me, I would say, when I was doing my undergrad. Yeah.
He called that his Bavarian perspective, which is something he's very precise about. That came up a lot during the Lieutenant interview, that he brings the Bavarian perspective to whatever it is he does. And I think in Stroszek, he's seeing Germany from a slight remove, and the same way, I mean, he looks at everything, I think, just generally from a slight remove. But in Stroszek, the images hit harder because they are unvarnished, unflinching. I was trying to come up with the right word.
There's something I always like about a European eye on America.
It's never glossy.
And there's a foreignness to it, and that's what's great about this film, is there's a constant sort of foreignness of foreign people and a foreign land, and everything is new to them. And it's kind of but beautiful too. Just sort of a certain way of seeing America that you're not used to seeing. Another film I was really into, I mean, I still like a lot, is Gummo. And having Jean-Yves Escoffier, Leos Carax, the cinematographer, filming, the Deep South, that collision, it's something I've always really liked.
Yeah, I always think about the way, I think about Paris, Texas, and the way that that isn't quite what you expect it to be. I mean, it's just as in love with neon and billboards and everything, but it's on an angle. It's from just a slight... I think it's because... I wonder if it's because European filmmakers simply haven't trained on American films the way American filmmakers do, where, you're just like, oh, that's New York. I've seen that. I know that. And you're framing it in the perspective of the shot that you already know. Like people going down to Tribeca to recreate the angle on the Ghostbusters firehouse and all that.
Right.
But here you have people who have seen it and seen it only as an exoticized image, and they've never actually encountered it until they're there shooting their own movies. Yeah. So they just don't duplicate.
Yeah, and there's a sort of, I guess, with Stroszek and I guess Gummo too. There's like a willingness to show the underbelly of it. Like those mechanics in the garage or the truckers at the station.
Yeah, I think most other filmmakers, I mean, even European ones, would probably have cut out the kind of weird urban cowboy dialogue about jumping on either a bull or a waitress. I'm not sure which it was, but that just goes on and on and on, and you get it. You get it's braggadocio, and it's this posturing thing that Bruno is incapable of doing. He just isn't able to front even a little bit. To the point where he can't be in, like, the reason he isn't a part of a couple is because he's incapable of functioning on that level. You have to sort of play act a relationship before it's a real relationship. That's what dating is, I think. And he's at sea. He can't function, so he just has to sit and listen to this dialogue, which is also a weird kind of performance, and still have no, like, there's a lesson in there maybe if he listens, but he just can't learn it.
This is the mechanic?
Yeah, towards the end.
Oh, right, yeah. He, there's sort of just a weird poetry, too, to just the way that guy speaks. And just how vulgar it is kind of amazing.
Yeah. And again, 40 years ago, it would have been genuinely shocking.
Yeah.
I suspect, to an American audience to hear that movie. And even the sort of, even now that we're steeped in independent films about disintegrating characters, and there's a new one every 2 weeks, and they all borrow very heavily from these templates. In 1976, I would have loved to see this with an audience that, I mean, even like a Lincoln Center art house audience, how would they have handled it? What would they have thought?
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I mean, I have no way of knowing, really. Mm-hmm. But I always heard that his films were better received outside of Germany than back home. So, yeah. I wonder where, I don't even know where it premiered, or if it was at a festival, or if it...
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
If it was at Venice or something. Yeah.
I would assume. It would have been too soon for Toronto. And 76, I think, was just the first one.
I actually have a poster of it from, it might be from a retrospective, but it's a BFI release of it. So, I feel like it, he does sort of mention it a bit on the audio commentary that, American audience seem to like it, despite it. I mean, I think a lot of critics read it as a criticism of the U.S. or a damning of it, but, which it is, but it's more like a sad anthem, or there's something loving about it, despite it showing so eagerly being attracted to flaws or ugly things. It's still kind of wonderful, and I think there's just something so sincere about Bruno. There's something that's almost his downfall, is him being naive, too trusting, and
just hoping for something good to happen, but not making it happen himself. I think that's part of it. That's the reversal of him going to the bar, is that there's just you could get out of this if you really wanted to, or if you tried, but you just follow your pattern, and he acquiesces. He goes along with everything. He goes to America because it's somebody else's idea, and he kind of gets into the possibility of a relationship, even though it really isn't one, because it seems like something you should do.
I mean, the trip was funded on her being a prostitute.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems from the outset that means she's kind to him, and she, but
there's
it seems inevitable that it's that she maybe.
Well, I don't think she ever really stops, right? Like, she's still on the job, all the way through.
But I guess, and it's not even really about that. It's her, and when they break up, it's not because she's being unfaithful. It's because she doesn't want to sleep in the same bed. She wants a room of her own. She doesn't want to be with him. She wants to. So it's.
And we can sort of understand where she's coming from too. Like that's what's so strange and sad about the whole relationship, about both the major relationships in the film, is that his relationship to her is not nearly as important to her as it is to him. And for her, it's just a thing that's happening. It's sort of, I mean, I don't think they ever sleep together. I don't think we're supposed to believe that they
you're right.
did.
Yeah.
He's her means of escape initially, which is good. And I don't think she leads him on. I think he just assumes that's what's going to happen next because he doesn't really plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the entire American dream falls apart on them. Just everything collapses. They lose. He loses her. He loses the house. He loses the car. Basically, stops working. Everything falls apart at once.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you said, it's not cruel. Like, it's not personal.
Yeah.
This is just how it goes.
Yeah. It's not damning. It's not, he did this wrong, or this is, there's no, structure in that sense. It just kind of falls apart.
Mm.
Yeah.
But there is that, then you have the premature baby. You have the series of images of life fighting so hard.
Yeah.
Against insurmountable odds.
Yeah.
I mean, well, the baby probably comes out better than he does in the end.
Yeah.
But the idea that, look how hard it grabs, look how hard it clings.
That's in everyone, this sort of reflex that you can support your own weight.
Mm-hmm.
The baby's hanging off of his fingers. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. This is the weird contradiction of the movie is that it opens with that image, or it's fairly close to the beginning, and then it gives us the chicken at the end, and the rabbit, and all of these animals just doing things that they're not even conscious of in the same way. They're just programmed to do it. And
because that's another big metaphor for Herzog, right? It's the chicken metaphor of, if you stare a chicken in the eye, you'll understand what complete stupidity is.
Yes, the unblinking blackness of the abyss. Yeah. Which is amazing, because I don't know that he thinks we're any better.
Yeah.
Certainly he says this in the...
But yeah, I don't know if he would connect the two. I mean, there is a tendency like animals to represent humans or something, but I feel like that's for him, that's just nature. That's just, a wild animal, That's almost the same as the truck driving in a circle.
Right. It's just doing that because somebody set it in motion.
Yeah, that it's, yeah.
And he says this in the commentary. He said that he knew that the dancing chicken was an incredible metaphor. He just didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
What it represented. And I think that in Stroszek we're supposed to take away the idea that everyone is capable of falling into that same circle. Like, if you don't consciously move out of it, this is what happens. You don't go anywhere. You drive a lot, but you end up going in a circle. You go halfway across the world, and you end up alone with yourself. Nothing changes. It's colder, I think.
Yeah. He could have gone anywhere. I don't think it's that. Yeah, he went to the United States. He could have gone to Bavaria from Berlin.
Right? And likely the same thing would have happened.
Yeah.
He would have been unhappy and isolated because he wasn't given the... Well, he was given the opportunity, but he wasn't given the exposures. The tragedy of Bruno S. is that he was denied a childhood. He was abused and institutionalized, and
there's so many things you can wonder about, why he's the way he is. But I find myself not thinking about that so much when I watch it. I just, there's just this balance he achieves of it being, of just the experience of it is haunting enough. That just so many elements are just so mysterious that. And then, what sticks with you is, the shot of the baby or Bruno's innocence, or it's, something more just mysterious about humans, I guess, or those sort of experiences. So, I found myself not really wondering too much about why did this happen to Bruno. Okay. It just seems so obvious that he's an innocent person that's just getting thrown around by life. I guess it's so clear that, his prison release and all of that it's, I'm sure it's better now than it was back then, that there's sort of elements of society or a safety net or a way to help people when they're being released from institutions, or, there's so many things that, of him just being, feeling like he has to escape Germany because pimps are breaking into his apartment and throwing him around on a piano.
Yeah.
But
that's like a perfect moral premise as well, right? We've got...
and that's his piano, too. Apparently, that's what he did with his money from Kasper Hauser. He bought the piano.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. which is amazing. That was his actual apartment, and it was always a mess. That he would just collect objects and wouldn't know what to do with them.
Yeah. God. Well, is that building himself an identity, or is it just preferring things to people?
I guess so.
There's so much. Yeah, it's such a strange story that you just want explanations for everything.
Yeah.
And same with the film, I suppose. In the end, of course, there aren't any.
Yeah. I guess you want that maybe sometimes with characters, for them to represent something that you can relate to. Mm-hmm. But he's just so unique, someone that spent, I don't know how many years he was locked up.
I think 21, 22.
So yeah, you're going to have a different relationship with objects and people. And so at a certain point, it can't represent everyone, it's so...
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's hard not to.
Well, just, the natural sort of, empathy of cinema.
Exactly.
Right? He has
and the film is him, I think. That the film is just so much just orbiting him, and that it's him in Germany, then him in the U.S. And almost deconstructing those environments through him.
While he remains mostly unchanged, just getting angrier.
That's the thing. Yeah, he remains mostly unchanged. I mean, he flees Germany. I mean, and then when he's in the U.S., there's nowhere to go at the end.
Mm-hmm.
He can't flee back, and he's... Scheitz has been arrested, and Eva, where did she go? To Vancouver, did they say?
She's, setting out for a better life.
More fun in Vancouver. Yeah.
Well, Wisconsin, I mean...
Yeah, it's hard.
It was horrifyingly cold, and there are shots where even the extras are suffering, and these are people who live there. It's just really... It felt cold. It's watching it in the middle of July, and it's still... A chill goes through you, just watching those images.
Yeah, and there's some great...
the hostility of the environment, you just feel it.
Yeah.
But Berlin comes off pretty hostile as well.
Yeah, Berlin does come off much better.
So you've said that this fits, like, in your Herzog canon, this is right up there.
I think so.
Is there... I was trying to think of an analog, of a maybe a present-day film that kind of represents this, and I couldn't. I mean... Your films are about people who are isolated.
Yeah.
And you work with non-professionals, and there are elements of it. But I was trying to come up with any other, like a direct... You can't point to a movie and say, oh, this is like Stroszek. They're really...
Yeah, it is. It does stand alone in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we can think of one or two. But there's a movie I really like called Fremland. Have you seen Fremland?
Yeah. It's not Fremland. That was part of the Mumblecore package that played at the Blur a few years back.
Yeah.
When Films We Like imported it. I think it was there with Nights and Weekends. It
might have been.
Or right around that time. Anyway,
yeah, around that time, that summer. Yeah, I remember that. I remember meeting the director. I think it would have been 2008. I
think so, yeah.
Around that time I was working on Princess Margaret Boulevard. But yeah, back to Bruno S. and Herzog. Yeah, no, it's hard to think of. I can see people that are influenced by it, but again, it's hard to find a figure like Bruno S. that has that backstory and then it's so deeply incorporated into the film. I mean, even just recently we played Krisha. I mean, but different. You don't quite go on the same journey, but from what I understand of that film, it's his aunt and using those sort of emotions.
Right.
But so again,
it's simply a case of a similarity rather than continuity.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't know the whole story. I mean, I wish I don't really want to talk about it too much at length. But yeah, it definitely. I think what's clear about Stroszek is very few films have gone to that level of just sort of having such a production and such an adventure with a character like that. That it really takes a figure like Herzog to be able to pull that off. You really break it down, you realize what a towering achievement it is.
Yeah. It's not anything that you can. I mean, you can easily explain it.
Yeah.
Man gets out of prison, does these things, but it doesn't capture the tone, or it doesn't capture the attitude, or the empathy, or even the humor. Like, it just you can boil any movie down to two sentences, and invariably, you're doing a disservice to the film. But with Stroszek, you need paragraphs.
Yeah.
Just to explain the mood and the tone and the use of music and the use of atmosphere and everything. It is, yeah, it's a singular experience.
Definitely.
And I fear for the person who tries to repeat it or remake it or riff on it.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, but yeah, it's just about, you know, I think there's lessons that can be taken from it. I mean, I definitely am influenced by it. Yeah, I wouldn't hope to replicate it, but yeah, I think there's just so much that, you know, yeah, it's priceless about it. I think that's what I take from it is that there's things you can't copy. That's what's great about it is you can't copy it, and you can't buy it. You know, there's no actor you could pay to be Bruno S.
Right.
It would be so foolish to remake it. So you can only take good lessons from it, I think.
Yeah.
That's, how I feel about a lot of my favorite filmmakers. It's it's from such a distance too that we know. There's always that desire to feel like we understand what made that film great, you know, and this film offers a lot of that. Herzog has said a lot about it, about Bruno S.'s backstory and things like that. But there's things, yeah, you can never know.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the anecdote that supposedly Bruno would prepare for scenes by screaming for an hour or two, which is, I don't know if that's a thing that I would encourage in performers, but apparently it helped him compose himself. It would just get out all the nervousness,
wow,
and the discomfort. But
I didn't hear that one. That's
yeah. How do you prep for that? Do you tell your crew, we'll shoot in about 90 minutes, 95, Bruno has to scream? It's the kind of thing that is probably, easily dismissed as an urban legend, but apparently it was the case.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't, yeah.
It's almost like the caricature of the new German cinema. That's, that must be how they did that or this. It's that level of intensity to just get it out before you start to shoot, and then you just have a normal composed performance, or
the opposite. Or he's worked up,
and just holding it back.
Yeah, I remember. Hearing, we were talking about Fraulein earlier. I remember hearing with that film that he would get the actor to run up and down the stairs and do push-ups before scenes, so that he'd be like physically overwhelmed.
Okay.
And that's, I've used tricks like that myself as ways to sort of coax out performances, or for there to be a physical component to the scene that would put somebody a bit on edge. But yeah, just imagining him screaming before performance, it's great. Yeah, no, that's something I really like about, somebody, a unique personality, being the center of the film and having to do all these things to get it to work. It just seems like I love the idea of just chaos grounding the production, of this guy being at the middle of it in all these different ways that you'd have to work to get it to work. It just seems like that would breathe so much life into the film. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that does lead us to the obvious final question, which is, or not the obvious final question, but that does lead us to the final question, which is, what of Stroszek have you borrowed or stolen or absorbed into your filmmaking DNA? Can you think of things, specific stuff that you've lifted?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, again, I don't think I do it to the same extent. Obviously, as I said, no one can really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I would say both with How Heavy This Hammer and Tower. Through the casting, I didn't write these films for them, for those actors, but I definitely rethought them after meeting them. And my films, I think, are also similarly focused on a character. So much of it was, learning about these actors and tailoring the film to it, all these, so even that moment of him screaming before a scene is something I like, and I think, like, for instance, with Tower, I think I was going for my own Herzogian moment with the raccoon.
Yeah.
That I wanted.
See that.
Yeah, I wanted, something about the way of nature being sort of metaphor for this urban alienation, or this idea of trying to capture a raccoon.
Yeah. Well, it struck me as being about sort of the implacable stupidity. Just the raccoon is not going to change what it's doing. He's not going to outwit this guy. He's just going to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought. I mean, even just when you were talking earlier about the ending of Stroszek, I don't know if Tower necessarily has an ending either, but it's, him going on a quest or something, this need for a pursuit, and it being kind of futile, and it being this wild nature staring back at you. But yeah, I think again, just the way I think of actors is definitely informed. I mean, there's a lot of documentary moments in both films, but it doesn't matter. They're just sort of threaded into the film, and it just enriches it constantly. Even just Bruno's way of talking, just both Erwin and Derek have very unique ways of talking, and that's something that just I wanted to find a way to embrace and thread into the film. I mean, I never imagined Erwin having a Flemish accent, but when we found him, it was just right, and then the same with Derek's way of speaking. I mean, the way that he would sort of go on these, he would rant, kind of reminds me a little bit of Bruno S. Of a character just wanting to, feeling cornered at times and wanting to express himself.
Right. And with Erwin and Hammer, I had the sense that there's sort of maybe it's not a joke, but it's a motif within the film that whenever he starts speaking, he might be hostile or he might not be, and there's no way to read it until his third or fourth sentence. Yeah. He just starts from a baseline of something. And I couldn't tell if it was hostility or anger or just brusqueness. The way he speaks to his kids, the way he speaks to other people, he doesn't really modulate. Yeah.
That's what I like, is it's just this feeling of the way he's talking, of this sort of it just, we would shoot and there would be a sort of mark or a tone we'd hit that would kind of level off and would feel like the right way to approach it. I mean, it's something I was interested in too, this idea of masculinity and this sort of underlying tension, or feeling like you're shouting at people, feel like you're shouting at them, but you don't feel like you are. Right. Viewing the character, also just his nature, or his rather than his arc, or his the lesson he's learning, or his quest. It's more just his feeling out his presence, or the way he's interacting with the world. And I think that's at the core of what I'm looking for with those films. I think, but in contrast to Stroszek, I think Stroszek's a much more loving portrait. I mean, I do love these characters, but I think I don't see that in Stroszek. I don't see like, oh, this is what he did wrong, or I can see that a bit more. Maybe it's because I relate to these characters as well. I mean, that it's half, falling in love with this actor and this amazing persona or presence that they're bringing to the film, but then it's me also getting out these ideas of my next film is going to be a female protagonist, because I feel like with male protagonists, I feel like I have to destroy them or something. So I'm hoping to find a more, something more like Stroszek, where it's just, that's what I love. I mean, I think I think I've noticed this with a lot of my favorite films, that like with Stroszek, like what's the most amazing thing about him, his sort of innocence, is also his downfall. Like what's amazing, it's just like something so cinematic and endlessly expressive. It's just as a relationship to the understanding the world, that it's just such a perfect entry point for a film or a thing to rotate around. So I mean, I feel like I've definitely taken inspiration from it, but it's such a high mark that it's gonna, I think, constantly be a source of inspiration.
My thanks to Kazik Radwanski, whose new film How Heavy This Hammer opens in Toronto and Vancouver this Friday, August 12th. It opens in Montreal later this month, with further engagements to be announced. In fact, you should follow Kaz on Twitter for that, at Redvinsky, Redvineski, all one word, and you can keep an eye on MDFF Films at MDFF. You can find Stroszek on DVD from Anchor Bay Entertainment and on Blu-ray from Shout Factory in that magnificent Herzog collection. Both releases have the audio commentary we mentioned. The film's also available on iTunes and Google Play, and in any case, you must experience it to fully understand what we've been talking about. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you want to leave a review on iTunes, that would be very kind of you. This week's call sign inevitably is, We Can't Stop the Dancing Chicken. Thanks for listening.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.